God has brought many final words for New York City. And in the prophecy, you're going to hear some of those words. You're going to hear about why New York will be judged. You're going to hear about what form that judgment will take. You're going to hear about what God has to say about the so-called good people of New York. So even those that God would say, okay, these people are not exactly guilty of gross sin, but here is their sin nonetheless. So you're going to hear what's going to happen to that. You're going to hear what God says about America, the fact that America does not adopt a watchman's stance. So in other words, America is not watching and praying for the coming of the Lord. In fact, America is getting deeper and deeper into the kind of sin that would cause a person's heart to go into palpitations when they hear it. And the reason I know that that is so is because when people come to the Master's voice and they begin to go through the video, especially the videos of the last 3 months, and they begin to hear about sex houses where little children are being sodomized by grown men, where people are being chained to walls and being forced to perform sex acts. And as long as the person who is paying to chain you to that wall has paid for 2 hours, that person has the right to sodomize you or do whatever they want to you, sometimes even bringing in animals to use on you for the 2 hours that they have paid for. And so when people come to this channel and they hear the things that God is revealing, they're taken aback because there's this general idea that this is a nation of Christians, which is by now, if you've come this far with the Master's voice, it's fallacy. So God says this nation is not even remotely poised to expect him. And this means that includes all the Christians who are falsely laboring under the belief that they are not going to be tried, tested. They think that when Prophet Daniel said that many will be purified and made white, he meant that they would get to put their robes through the wash and then go to heaven without being tested. God is going to try the hearts of men. He is going to insert a blade into the guts of every single person, and he alone will determine who is fit for rest in his kingdom. There's going to be a very high death toll here, and I'm not going to give that number. All I will say is that God gave me this number in May, and it shocked me. It took my breath away. It was in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 a.m. I woke up and the Lord started speaking to me, and he was telling me how high the death toll in the United States is going to be. And the number he gave me, I never would have brought it out in public, but I spoke that number out. The number came out of my mouth as I prophesied under the Spirit of the Lord, and he told me to not edit it out, but to leave it there. God says that he will not show mercy in this country for the things that this country is guilty of. You will hear in the call that there will be a civil war in America, and that people will flee this country such as has never been seen before. So CNN has been with me my whole life. My whole life, there has been a CNN talking and giving the news. There has been a BBC talking and giving the news. But this exodus out of America is going to be covered in a way that has never been covered before. And so I'm going to go right back to the beginning. This brief prelude is going to contain many different experiences and dreams and revelations. So let's start from the beginning. God says that New York City will be judged. And her judgment will be that she will be drowned under the water in the latter days. So I've shared these prophecies already before. I think one of them is called New York will go underwater. And the other one is called the water will rise like a pencil. And what God basically has revealed to me is that a super unbelievable, shocking, more than 100-foot water, uncountable feet of water will come to New York City and will basically devastate and destroy the entire East Coast, obliterating New York City. There's going to be nothing left of this place. In fact, the phrase that he used in the prophecy, the water will rise like a pencil, is that something called megaton force. Megaton force is what God said is going to hit the proud skyline of New York. And he said to me, Celestial, the buildings are going to snap in half. And so when I made that video, I actually made this motion because it's the motion of having a pencil and you break it in half and the top half just basically falls to the ground and you see the bottom of the pencil sticking up like a jagged stump. And that's what I saw in the vision, that the buildings were snapped in half because the water that came from the sea was so massive that when it hit the buildings, those buildings, whether they have steel in them, whether they have girders, no matter what they have, They broke off like pencils, and the bases of them were sticking up like jagged tooth stumps out of the ground. And the whole thing was covered. New York fell down, and the sea rose up, and the sea took everything, and there was nothing there. And God says that New York's sins are homosexuality. This is same-sex attraction. So please listen, if you're 15 years old and you're involved in homosexuality, this does not necessarily make you a sodomite. Sodomy is what homosexuals practice. It is the act of men having sex in the backside. So if you're a 15-year-old and you only like boys so far, you have committed the sin of homosexuality, but not yet the sin of sodomy. When you become sexually active in that lifestyle, man to man or woman to woman, then you are then you are doing sodomy. And with the women, what God has showed me is that the women put something on to give them the ability like a male, and then they will either do it to a female or they can do it to a male. New York's sin is the sin of abortion. The Lord has said in other prophecies that New York is a very deceptive state. That this is a state that manipulates the federal government so that it gets more than its fair share. Say it's a place of trickery and deception. It is a city of cruelty. But the Lord mentioned one new sin for New York that I had never heard today, and that sin is the sin of tolerance. And he was rebuking Christians in New York City and saying that your problem is your tolerance. You want to be the friend of the sinner more than you want to save the sinner from sin. And therefore, the good people of New York City will not be allowed to escape because they are complacent, weak, and they are dim candles who do nothing to preach the true gospel of the living God. And so God says that armies will occupy New York City. And I've spoken of the occupying armies that will come to America. They are the forces of Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan. And then as time progressed, because this prophetic gift with me is literally growing in front of me, I'm watching it expand itself and begin to stretch and cover so much territory every day. After about a year or two had passed of prophesying the same countries, God gave me new countries, and those new countries included Japan, that will also come here and have soldiers here. And God revealed that North Korea and South Korea will become one country. So those two countries, after about 70 or more years of disunification, of being at war with each other, fighting and in great separation, they're going to become one Korea again. And they're going to come. And along with China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan, that fulfills the prophecy called the Kings of the East, when the Euphrates River will dry up and people will march from Asia here to the United States. And so another punishment that will come upon New York is that God says that New Yorkers will go hungry. This is not in the prayer call, but God has said to me very often that the sin of America is that she has a brazen forehead, meaning she is extremely hard up here and she will not listen, but also that she has a rude and impudent tongue. So that means when the Lord is bringing forth his prophetic words, people will say, it's a lie, you are a liar. Your father, Satan, is the one who is telling you these things. But God has said many times, Celestial, bear these things not in your heart. For when men go silent because of the hunger that will hold them, they will not be able to speak. And it will be you who comes back to me to beg and plead for them.